Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Rajesh Gautam from Dr. Harishingaur Vishwavidyalaya Sagar, and today we are going to discuss about a module entitled Relationship of Social Cultural Anthropology with Other Disciplines from the paper Sociocultural Anthropology. So students, let's come to know what we are going to discuss in this module. First, we will know about sociocultural anthropology and its relationship with other disciplines. Then we will also learn the basic introductory background about the social anthropology. Thereafter, we will learn the in this module that knowledge about the meaning, definition, conceptual understanding and nature and characteristic feature of the discipline. Again, adding to this, the module will also attempt to give social anthropological perspective as well as dimensions to these basic social institutions. So let us start. You might be knowing that anthropology is a science in which we study mankind from two perspectives. One is sociocultural and another is biological perspective. When we study mankind from sociocultural perspective, that branch of anthropology is known as social anthropology, and it is one of the social sciences. Natural sciences deals with natural phenomena, whereas social sciences deal with cultural as well as social data. The scope and subject matter of social science consists of social institutions, policy, economy, crime and several other aspects of the society. The objective of all social sciences is to study the different aspects of the society. In a broad sense, social science, namely economics, political science, history, sociology and other disciplines, or the focuses or these disciplines focus on the study of man as a member or man as a member of a group or society. Thus, the nature of social science is essentially mental and cultural. Kroeber lays down in detail the scope and subject matter of social sciences or social anthropology in general. He argues that social sciences are highly culture conscious. They aim to investigate human culture as such, though his emphasis on culture study may be contested. The fact is that social sciences study all specialization of a society. When we look at the relationship of social anthropology with other branches of anthropology, namely physical anthropology, cultural anthropology, prehistory, linguistic, etc., this is the relationship of socio-cultural anthropology. We are going one by one. Let first we understand social anthropology in Britain means ethnology or sociology. So in different continent or countries, that how social anthropology is understood. In Britain, social anthropology means ethnology or sociology. In US, it refers to culture, and in France and other countries it means structuralism. There are two kind of relationship in anthropology. One is of sister type. For example, anthropology has some important branches such as social anthropology, cultural anthropology, ethnology, prehistory, linguistic. and others are, these are collateral type or sister discipline, whereas there are some another level of disciplines or branches of science have different relationship with social anthropology, and these includes economics, political science, history and psychology. There are differences in four aspects in social anthropology and sociology. These are difference in field area, methodological differences, holistic and specific differences, and differences of philosophical orientation. So, first let me discuss the difference in field area. Social anthropology focuses on primitive societies, whereas sociology concerns itself with civilized society. The second difference between sociology and social anthropology is methodological difference. Social anthropology employs fieldwork as a dependable source of data generation, whereas sociology on the other hand depends on collection of documents and generation of statistical data. The third difference between sociology and social anthropology is holistic and specific difference. Social anthropology believes in making holistic studies of the primitive community. Difference in situation of the community are functionally interrelated. Quite centrally, sociology on the other hand dwells on a specific problem of the society. Fourth difference between sociology and social anthropology is the difference of their philosophical orientation. Social anthropology makes a general body of information about primitive social life. In anthropological studies, theoretical input is relatively less. The sociological approach, on the other hand, has a heavy dose of social philosophy and theoretical approach. In conclusion, it could be said that both these social sciences, means sociology and social anthropology, have differences of emphasis and perspectives. The specialization of social anthropology rests on primitive people and methodology of research. Fieldwork method is taken up in small scale society. It takes a long time to generate data. On the other hand, the theme of study of sociology is larger societies, and the fieldwork is through tools such as schedule and questionnaire, which usually take leisure time. Now we will discuss the relationship of social anthropology with ethnology. In the words of Evans Pritchard, ethnology classifies people on the basis of their distribution irrespective of any time scale. Again, you can listen. According to Evans Pritchard, ethnology classifies people on the basis of their distribution irrespective of any time. In other words, ethnology looks at people from the ethnic point of view at the present time or in the past time by the movement and mixture of people and the diffusion of cultures. There is much similarity in ethnology and social anthropology. Both study the indigenous and modern people. In USA, cultural anthropology and ethnology are used synonymously. Both are regarded as complementary branches of the more general sciences of anthropology. It was after the First World War what ethnology parted company with social anthropology. Earlier, under the influence of Durkheim and River, American anthropologists were at the first inclined to accept the general position that culture consisted of social facts, that ethnology or cultural anthropology was an autonomous science. As a matter of fact, ethnology is a science of culture history. It means that an ethnologist seeks to specify cultural and mental laws to explain the process of culture history. The similarity or close relationship between ethnology and social anthropology is very simple. Both study society, that is man, and culture. Ethnology is concerned with the common cultural elements of all groups, not with standing, place, or time. Now, let me come to discuss the relationship of social anthropology and history. As you know, there are many variants of history. It cannot be defined in a single sentence. Most of the scholars define history as a chronological account of the past events. Traditionally, therefore, the emperors, rulers, and elites who make history constitute the theme of history. In simple words, history is the account of ruling dynasties. It must be stressed that social anthropology has never tried to replace history. Its analysis have traditionally been focused on social and cultural interrelationship at a particular point of time and until recently. It has emphasized the historical process which have led up to the present. Interestingly, in Great Britain, America, and France, so the British, American, and French traditions aims usually to account the working of a particular society or culture. They do not try to explain how it emerged. Dear students, let's we know history, the relationship of history and social anthropology. Social anthropology writes about prehistoric people and their tradition and institution. As a matter of fact, the founding father of social anthropology, namely Franz Boas in US and Radcliffe Brown and Malinowski in England, were all critical of the rather speculative forms of cultural history which preceded modern anthropology. The historical methodology and social anthropology remained averse to each other because of anthropological thrust of functionalism which dominated the first quarter of the 20th century. It could be safely said that in the Indian context, social anthropology cannot be properly understood without reference to its history. The classical works of social anthropologists, such as those of Andrebete, S. Dove, and K. S. Singh, very clearly indicate that historical context is quite useful in understanding tribal ethnography and social anthropology. Despite this relationship, social anthropology earns its own autonomous status. It studies its subject matter not with notwithstanding any period or boundaries. Now let me discuss the relationship of social anthropology with psychology. You might be knowing psychology has two variants, general or individual psychology. The two variants are, one is general or individual psychology and another is social psychology. Both are related to social anthropology. The American anthropologists are greatly influenced by this relationship. However, French was noted a noted American cultural anthropologist literally dominated the field of relationship of social anthropology and psychology. French Boas has undoubtedly stressed the importance of the relationship of these two fields of study. Franz Boas, in his monumental book, The Mind of Primitive Man, he set forth his conviction that there is no fundamental difference between the mind of primitive man and the civilized man. Lewis has also established the role of psychology in understanding the ethnology of primitive people. If, for example, the tribals are influenced by the Devi movement in South Gujarat, it is clear case of the relationship of social psychology and social anthropology. However, general psychology interprets the behavior of man as his individual manifestation. So now let's we understand the relationship of psychology and social anthropology. Regarding the relationship of psychology with social anthropology, it can be said that there are two different realms dealt with by the two disciplines. Psychology is concerned with the behavior of man and social anthropology focuses on interrelationship among different institutions of the society. There is a basic contradiction regarding the approach adopted by the two disciplines. Psychologists begin by taking the tribal culture for granted as if it were uniform and universal. With this assumption, they study psychic behavior in a tribe. On the other hand, the same approach is taken by social anthropology. It tends to take human nature for granted as if it were uniform and studies the diverse cultures of the tribe. Further, to simplify the relationship between psychology and social anthropology, it could be stated that the study of interrelationship in a primitive society owes much to the psychological conditioning of the people in the society. This can be illustrated by referring to the situation of Indian tribals. The tribals historical the tribals historically have been exploited by the moneylenders and traders. IP Desai notes that when there is meeting of the tribals of Bardoli Taluka, they simply prohibit the entry of non-tribals. They consider caste Hindus as their enemies. Their psychological mindset determines their behavior. Therefore, in any study of primitive society, the psychology of the primitive constitute a relevant point. This also explains the relationship between social anthropology and psychology. The former is concerned with a variable of culture and latter with the mind. Now, let me discuss the relationship of economics and social anthropology. As you know, social anthropology and economics are interrelated disciplines. For a modern society, money is everything, and for primitive society, it is something else, which is kinship, which is all important. The status of economics among primitives can be seen from the theory given by Malinowski. His thesis was that among tribals, the economy is an integrated part of social and cultural totality. His observation was that economic system and actions can only be fully understood if we look into their interrelations with other aspects of culture and society. Admittedly, social anthropology studies the tribal economy, and this brings it closer to the discipline of economics. Despite this inherent relationship between social anthropology and economics, it must be said that each has its own distinct autonomous status. They differ in their perspective and approach. Marshall Salin has worked on the process of evolution. He studied of Polynesian social stratification in 1958 is quite interesting. It is in his book that he showed the relationship between state formation and kinship organization. He has constructed the conceptual framework of cultural relativism, that is, each society has its own culture. In other words, culture is group specific. He has also been influenced by Marxism and structuralism. His study of primitive economy very clearly establishes and differentiates the relations between social anthropology and economics. Recently, a new branch of economic anthropology has emerged in the wider domain of anthropology. This brings economics all the more closer to social anthropology. Now, it is being stressed that tribal economy is basically different from than the general discipline of economics. To spell out the specificity of the tribal economy, it would be better if we refer to Erickson. He observes that anthropologists have always wished to call attention to the ways in which the economy is an integrated part of a social and cultural totality, and to reveal that economic system and actions can only be fully understood if we took into their interrelationship with other aspects of culture and society. Just as politics ought to be seen as part of a wider system which includes non political aspects as well, the economy cannot be properly studied as an isolated sector. Thus, the tribal economics, as discussed by anthropologists, has a functional nature. It is related to other parts of tribal life, such as religion, kin, clan, and polity. The modern economy is different in its perspective and approach. This economy is rational and is importantly based on market principles. This theoretical difference between social anthropology and economics has been aptly brought out by Douglas and Isherwood in their book the world of gods. The authors have given an anthropological answer to the question why people in modern societies want commodities. The drive for consumption witnessed in these societies is far from natural. Even it is taken for granted within academic economics and among lay people. Ashal Doshi has elaborately worked on the food habits of the tribals of Rajasthan. He argues that there is culture in food and therefore food consumption cannot be analyzed wholly on the principle of economic theory. The academic economics is quite different from the economy of social anthropology. Modern economy is basically a capitalist economy. It is a newcomer to the world. Its theory and principles are helpful in understanding the general economic behavior, but the tribal economy is essentially different for its stresses ethnicity rather than rationality. The example of gift system which is prevalent among the which was prevalent among the Trobriand islanders fully explain the nature of tribal economy. As a matter of fact, among the tribals, much of the economics is guided by gift economy or barter system. In a capitalist economy, money is the common denominator for what is commonly thought of as economic activity, and it serves to single out an economic institution in those societies as something apparently separate from the rest of society. If we look at a tribal society, there is no single word for economy as an institution separated from social life in general. What we find in the relationship of economics and social anthropology is that both are concerned with the society of production, distribution, exchange and consumption. To summarize the relationship and differences between social anthropology and economics, let me observe it in this way. 1. Social anthropology is empirical, whereas general economics is analytical. Social anthropology is basically micro studies, whereas economics focused on macro studies. Social anthropology consider economics as part of whole society, whereas economics on the other hand separate it and has a distinct existence in society. Economy in social anthropology is basically a community economy, whereas in general economics it is individual centered. A person wants to maximize his benefit through cost benefit calculation. Social anthropology begins its economic research right from a small little society. Contrarily, economics concern itself with the macro level communities. Social anthropology looks at economic processes from the cultural point of view, general economics from national point of view. It looks at the maximization of the benefits. So, dear students, now let us summarize what we have learned in this module entitled Socio-cultural Anthropology and its relationship with other disciplines. Firstly, I told you about socio-cultural anthropology and its dimension and nature, and how it differ from other disciplines of social sciences like economics, history, political science, and so on. How it maintain its uniqueness and focusing on human culture, its evolutionary perspective, primitive societies, etc. Its relationship with sociology, ethnology, history, psychology, and economics were also told by me in detail to you. I hope now you understand better the relationship of social anthropology and all other social sciences. Social anthropology has now established itself as an autonomous academic discipline. It has its relation with other social sciences. As I told you, these relations stem from the fact that as a social science, social anthropology share some of the common aspects of theory, data, and methods of other social sciences. On a broader plane, it could be safely said that social anthropology is different from other social sciences on many counts. However, its distinctness is largely upheld by the study of indigenous people, holistic study, and network of interrelationship in the primitive society. Thank you very much.